The first thing that hit me was sandalwood. Not cologne, not a candle. Her. It drifted out of the open doorway while rain ticked on the hood of my truck. My work boots were still on the porch mat when she stepped forward and wrapped both arms around my shoulders. Her cheek pressed into the back of my gray t-shirt. Her body shook once, hard, like she was trying to snap herself back together. I froze. The last time I had stood this close to Elena Vance, I was 22, holding her daughter's hand at a county fair, trying not to look like the broke kid who did not belong next to a girl from a big house. Back then, Elena had smiled at me in that polite, distant way rich mothers use on boys who are not going to last. Now she clung to me like I was the last solid thing in a world that had moved under her feet. "Caleb," she whispered into my shoulder. My name sounded different in her mouth this time. Less like a label, more like a choice. I lifted my hands slowly, careful, like I was touching something fragile. One palm settled between her shoulder blades. I felt the tremor under her silk blouse. Her other hand gripped the seam of my shirt and did not let go. Behind her, the old Victorian house looked like a tired woman forced into a dress that did not fit. Fresh paint on the trim, sagging porch steps. A warped front door that did not close right. Inside, the air smelled like wet lumber and old money. I cleared my throat. "Elena, what happened?" She pulled back just enough for me to see her face. No makeup, eyes red. A pale line of dried tears on one cheek. She tried to smile anyway. It slid off her face before it could land. "My contractor walked," she said. "My inspection is in 10 days. If I fail, the bank." Her voice cut off like someone had closed a door. Her jaw tightened. She swallowed and looked past me, out at the street, like saying the last words would make them real. I felt my own pulse pick up in my throat. "Okay," I said slowly. "Did you call anyone?" "I called 3 people," she answered. Her hand went to the brass knob and twisted it too hard. 2 said no. 1 asked if I had the Vance divorce money yet. Quote, her fingers slipped on the brass. She let out a short breath through her nose. Then she looked up at me. For a second, my body did something stupid. My heart thumped too loud. My grip on my tool bag tightened until the strap creaked. This was not the version of Elena I knew. No pearls. No perfect posture. No smooth, practiced laugh. Just a woman stripped down to something real, standing in her doorway with rain behind me and panic in her eyes. "You do not have to do this," she said fast, like she heard my silence and wanted to give me an out. "I know it is complicated." "I know, Jessica." "Do not," I cut in, quieter than I felt. "Just do not talk about her yet." The porch light flickered. The rain got heavier. A cold gust slid under my collar and down my spine. Elena stepped aside. She did not say, "Come in." She held the door open with her whole body. I walked in. The house was worse inside. Wet lumber stacked in the front parlor, a half-torn wall in the dining room, electrical boxes open like ribs. The smell of damp plaster and dust hiding under lemon cleaner. I did what I always do when a job feels too big. I pulled out my tape measure and my notebook and started with facts. Front parlor. Subfloor soft near the bay window. Hall bath. Supply line sweating. Fitting corroded. Attic insulation thin. Main panel. Breakers mismatched. 2 circuits doubled up like someone had gotten tired halfway through. Elena hovered at my shoulder. Her eyes followed the tip of my pencil like it was the only thing keeping her above water. When I finished the first walk through, I tore the page off and held it out. "Here is what fails inspection," I said. "Here is what can wait. If you try to do everything at once, you will run out of money before you run out of problems." She took the paper with both hands and read it line by line, no questions. No drama. When she finally looked up, her eyes were clearer. "What is the fastest way to make it safe?" she asked. That question told me more about her than the marble counters in the kitchen. We moved from room to room. She followed with a legal pad while I talked. "That outlet is not just old," I said, pointing at a blackened socket. It is angry. You host a dinner party with that, and someone plugs in a heater, you are one cord away from a fire. She wrote it down. The old Elena would have asked how much before she asked if it mattered. Elena just nodded once and said, "Then do it right." In the kitchen, she set a kettle on the stove. Her movements were small and neat, like she was trying to claim the room back piece by piece. "Peppermint?" she asked, reaching for a tin. I watched her hands. No ring, nails short. A faint bruise inside her wrist, like she had gripped a steering wheel too tight. "Sure," I said. She poured boiling water into 2 mugs. Steam rose. The smell of peppermint cut through the damp. She slid 1 mug toward me across the counter. Our fingers did not touch, but she left her hand there a second too long before pulling it back and folding her arms. "You should know," she said, her voice back in that calm, careful place. "Jessica and I were not talking much, not because of you, because of everything." Quote, I kept my eyes on the floor plan I had sketched on her butcher paper. "I am here to fix a house," I said. "I know." She did not flinch. "And I am here to make sure you get paid on time, and to not embarrass you." It was an apology without the word sorry. Somehow it felt heavier. On day 3, the house started to sound different, less hollow, more alive. The saw whined. The nail gun snapped. My radio hummed in the background. The smell of wet rot faded into fresh-cut wood. Elena worked at the dining room table with her laptop and that same legal pad. She called suppliers like she had been doing it her whole life. "Yes, I understand you are backlogged," she said into the phone. "I also understand I am paying for delivery, so you can bring it Friday or I can take my account somewhere else." She did not raise her voice. She did not beg. She just made her words sound like the only answer. When she hung up, she looked at me. "Friday," she said. A short laugh escaped me. It surprised both of us. Her mouth twitched. Not a full smile, just a crack in the wall. She walked to the cooler, took out 2 sandwiches and brought them over to where I was working on a half-framed wall. "Sit," she said. "Eat." We ate lunch on paint buckets, facing the bare studs, our knees almost touching. She looked around the room like she was trying to match the mess to some picture in her head of how it would look finished. "You always worked like this," she said, eyes still on the wall. "When you were with Jessica, you disappeared into a project." "That is called having a job," I said, sanding a stud. "You would show up with sawdust in your hair when you picked her up," she said. She hated it. She wanted you polished. I turned my head slowly. "And you?" I asked. Her gaze held mine for 1 long beat. Then she looked down at her hands and wiped a little mustard off her thumb with a napkin, neat and careful. "I wanted her happy," she said. That was all. No big speech. Just a flat truth that landed hard in my chest. A truck rumbled past outside. The window frames rattled in their swollen tracks. Elena's eyes snapped to the glass. "That sound," she said. "It makes me think the whole place is going to fall down." "It will not," I said, and I heard the promise in my own voice. She looked at me like she was filing that sound away as proof. The storm season was coming. The inspection clock was ticking, and I was standing in my ex's mother's half-broken house, trying to pretend my heart was not waking up every time she looked at me like that. By the end of the first week, my hands were wrecked. Old lath, rusted nails, splinters that hid under my skin until they burned. I was standing at her kitchen sink, shaking my right hand out under the running water. Blood and dust swirled together and ran down the drain. "Hold still," Elena said. She moved in fast, not fussy, not fake. She opened the first aid kit with one hand, tore a strip of tape with her teeth, and took my hand like she had done it 100 times. Her fingers were warm and sure. "You have done this before," I said, watching her wrap my knuckles with neat, practiced turns. "My father played polo," she answered. For a second I saw her younger, standing on the edge of some perfect green field. "He broke things. I learned to fix what I could." She smoothed the tape down with her thumb. The small drag of her nail over my skin sent a line of heat all the way up my arm. I swallowed. Hard. She looked up and caught the movement in my throat. Her hand stayed on mine for one beat too long, then she released me. Slow, like she was choosing to let go, not dropping me. Outside, the sky was already dark for late afternoon. Wind shoved at the trees. The old house gave a low groan. Marcus yelled from the porch. "I checked the forecast," he called. "We're getting hit tonight." I wiped my hands dry and glanced at the window over the sink. One of the panes upstairs had a crack, like a spider web stretching across the glass. In a good wind, that thing would give. "Elena," I said, "we need to brace the windows before the storm hits." "I will get the ladder," she said. She did not hesitate. Watching her drag the ladder out from the garage in a plain sweater and old jeans did something strange to my chest. It was not about how she looked. It was about how hard she was trying to be in the work with me. No pearls, no heels, just hands on cold metal. We worked fast. Plywood on the inside. Weather stripping where I could squeeze it in. Temporary bracing on the weaker frames. Our shoulders brushed in narrow hallways. Her breathing got louder as we moved up and down the stairs, but she did not complain. We were halfway through sealing the upstairs hall when I heard it. A heavy, ugly thunk from below. I froze. "Marcus!" I yelled. He answered from the kitchen, voice sharp. "Caleb, you might want to see this." We ran downstairs. Water was blooming across the old wood floor near the pantry, dark spots spreading in a wide stain. It moved too fast to be a spill. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "That was not there," she said. "Pipe," I said, already dropping to my knees. I pressed my fingers into the water. It was cold and clean, not roof leak, not sewer, supply. I yanked open the pantry door. A thin, hard stream was spraying from a corroded fitting, hitting the wall with a sharp hiss. "Shut off main," I snapped. Elena did not freeze. She did not scream. She moved. She grabbed the old shut-off wrench that leaned in the corner, sprinted to the basement door, and disappeared down the stairs. "Left!" I yelled. "Left to close." "Got it!" she shouted back. The pipes groaned somewhere deep under the house. Then the hiss died. The water slowed to a drip. A moment later she came back up, hair damp at her temples, breathing fast, but her eyes steady. "I did it," she said, like she was checking. I looked at the dripping fitting, then at her, and a rough laugh broke out of me. "Yeah!" I said. "You did." We mopped the water with every towel in the place. Marcus went to get fans. By the time the first heavy sheets of rain hit the roof, we had the damaged section exposed and a temporary cap on the line. When we went back upstairs to finish the window bracing, Elena held the flashlight. The beam shook, just a little. "You okay?" I asked. "I am fine," she said through her teeth. Lightning flashed outside, bright enough to wash the hallway in white for a split second. The house jumped. Elena flinched hard. The flashlight beam jerked and bounced. I set the drill down and turned toward her. "Look at me," I said. She kept her eyes on the boarded window like the threat was only out there. I stepped closer until my shoulder brushed her arm. Not trapping her, just there. Contact. Her gaze slid to mine and stuck. I saw the fight inside her. She was trying to decide if she was allowed to need someone. I lifted my hand and hovered it near her waist, not touching yet. Waiting. She answered without words. Her hand slid over my wrist and guided my palm down to her hip. A simple move. Clear. Chosen. My breath left in a quiet exhale. Outside, wind slammed against the boards. Inside, Elena leaned forward and rested her forehead against my shoulder for one short second, like she was borrowing strength. The wall between us did not explode. It slipped, one brick at a time. The power went out around midnight. 1 second, the house hummed. The next, it was black, lit only by the flashlight, and gray light leaking in through tiny gaps around the plywood. Rain hammered the roof. The old floors creaked and shivered under the wind. We were in the front entry checking the new deadbolt on the warped door. I clicked it, tugged the handle, checked the strike plate, then clicked it again. The wind pushed, but the bolt held. "Again," Elena said. "Again." I agreed. I did it twice more until I was sure the door would not pop open from a bad gust. When I looked up, she was watching my hands, not like a client. Like a woman watching the way a man keeps something safe. Her eyes lifted to mine. The look there was not just gratitude, it was understanding, recognition. Her fingers brushed my taped knuckles, light and slow, like she was checking if I was really there. My heart slammed hard against my ribs. I forced my jaw to unclench. "You can tell me to stop," I said quietly. Her fingers curled into the fabric of my shirt at my hip. "Do not," she whispered. One word, not a speech, a choice. I leaned in slow enough for her to change her mind. She did not. Her hand slid up to the back of my neck and pulled me that last inch. Her mouth met mine soft at first, then hungrier, like she'd been holding something shut for a long time and it finally broke. I cupped her jaw with one hand, careful, thumb resting near her ear. My other hand stayed steady at her waist, not dragging her, just anchoring her against the shaking front of the house. A small sound slipped out of her, somewhere between a laugh and a broken breath. Her fingers tightened at my neck. "We can stop," I murmured against her lips. "We can just lock the door and sit it out." She shook her head. She turned slightly, opened the little front closet, and grabbed 2 towels. She pressed one into my chest. "Dry off," she said, nodding toward my hair where the rain had soaked in when we checked the upstairs boards. Then she took the other towel and, without asking, wiped the damp from my forearm where it had splashed earlier. It was not dramatic. It was not a show. It was care. Direct and sure. My next breath came out rough. I looked away for a second, because that simple act hit deeper than the kiss. Thunder cracked overhead. The whole house shuddered. Elena jumped. I tightened my hand at her waist, firm, keeping her steady. She let out a shaky little laugh. "God," she whispered. I rested my forehead against hers. My breathing was not much better than hers. Her hands slid to my chest and stayed there, feeling the hard beat under her palm. She did not comment. She just stood there with me in the dark, both of us listening to the storm. A heavy gust hit the door. The frame rattled, but the deadbolt stayed firm. Elena pressed her palm flat over the lock and held it there. Her fingers spread, feeling the metal hold against the push. She did not flinch that time. By Monday, the town had a story. A contractor's truck sitting every day in front of a newly divorced woman's big old house draws eyes. People at the hardware store looked a little longer than they needed to. The cashier asked Elena twice if she wanted help carrying things she could clearly handle. She lifted her chin and signed the receipt anyway. That afternoon, while Marcus and I were cutting trim in the front room, a new car pulled up. Dark suit, polished shoes, perfect hair. Richard Vance? He stepped into the living room like he still owned it. He clapped his hands once, slow. "Well," he said, "looks like you found help." Elena stood near the dining room doorway, spine straight, arms loose at her sides. "This is my house now," she said. His eyes moved over her, then over me, then back to her. "I heard you were having trouble with the bank," he said in a soft voice that was not really soft at all. "I am handling it," she said. "You always tried," he answered, like he was being kind, "until you did not." The air in the room cooled. I set my level down on the sawhorse and stepped forward, just enough to stand between them, not aggressive, just there. Richard's gaze flicked to me. "Caleb Ryland," he said, like he was rolling a small stone around on his tongue. "Still doing manual labor." "Still paying my own bills," I replied. Elena's mouth twitched, just a little. Richard noticed. "You should be careful," he said to her, but his eyes stayed on me. "The Chamber of Commerce does not like scandals." Quote. Elena walked to the front door and opened it. "Leave," she said. He smiled, that smooth, cold smile. "I hope you do not break anything you cannot afford," he murmured. He stepped out onto the porch like he still owned the way the air felt. Elena closed the door and leaned her back against it, eyes closed for half a second, breathing hard through her nose. I walked closer, not touching yet. "Are you okay?" I asked. She shook her head once. "No, she said. Then she opened her eyes, and they were clear and raw at the same time. But I am still here. She pushed off the door and stood on her own feet, even though her hands were still trembling. I nodded. So am I said. For a while after Richard left, we lived in a strange, quiet bubble. The work did not stop. If anything, it picked up speed. We had 10 days to make the house safe enough to pass inspection and a storm-damaged pipe to repair on top of everything else. Days fell into a rhythm. I arrived early, before 8. Marcus came in behind me with coffee and bad jokes. We measured, cut, wired, patched. The saw ran. The nail gun snapped. The radio hummed low. Elena worked at the dining room table. Laptop open. Phone closed, legal pad always ready. Her slippers made soft sounds on the wood floor as she moved between the coffee pot, the printer, and the stack of bills. She stopped wearing silk blouses. She wore sweaters and jeans. She tied her hair back with an elastic from her wrist and only put on jewelry when she had to leave the house. At lunch, she sat on the floor or on an upside-down bucket, eating sandwiches with us like it was normal. At night, after Marcus left, she brought peppermint tea to the half-finished rooms and walked through them with me, listening while I explained what had changed and what still needed work. It was simple. It was dangerous. It felt a little too much like a life. One night, around midnight, we sat on the kitchen floor with our backs against opposite cabinets. My tool bag rested between us. I was running new wire into an upgraded breaker panel. She was handing me screws one by one from a small plastic tub. "Why are you still awake?" I asked, taking another screw. "Why are you?" she asked back. "I have to finish this run," I said. "Inspector will want to see it clean." "I have to finish this budget," she said, tapping the notebook on her knees. "The bank will want to see it clean." She passed another screw. Our fingers brushed this time. Neither of us pulled away. It felt domestic. It felt like standing too close to a cliff. On Friday morning, the bubble finally burst. I came in through the back door like always, boots knocking mud off on the mat, tool bag heavy in my hand. I expected to hear the radio, maybe Marcus, maybe the kettle whistling. Instead, I walked into a wall of silence and tension so thick it felt like walking into a different house. Jessica stood in the kitchen. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her eyes were wild. She had Elena's phone in one hand, screen lit, fist clenched around it like evidence. Elena stood by the sink, one hand braced flat on the counter. She was pale. Her shoulders were back like she was facing a judge. Both of them turned when I stepped in. "You," Jessica said, the word sharp as glass. My stomach dropped. "Jess," I started. "Are you sleeping with him?" she screamed at her mother, turning back on Elena, shoving the phone forward. "After everything? After all the crying and the apologies and the speeches about how you never meant to hurt me?" Elena flinched at the word sleeping like it was a slap. "It is not what you think," I said, stepping forward with my hands open. Jessica laughed once, harsh and ugly. "Oh, it is exactly what I think," she said. "You could not stand that I loved someone you did not approve of, and now you have him in your house, in your bed, like some sick joke." Elena's breathing came faster. She lifted her chin, trying to keep her voice even. "Jessica," she said, "put the phone down. We will talk." "No," Jessica snapped. Her eyes filled with tears that did not look soft. They looked angry. "You do not get to talk. You always talk. You always make it sound reasonable until I feel crazy for being mad." Elena took one careful step forward. Jessica stepped back. It was small, just a shift in space, but it landed like a punch. I saw it hit Elena. Her face flickered, like something inside cracked. Her hand lifted halfway, reaching, then dropped to her side. I moved closer to Elena before I could think better of it. Instinct. Her daughter saw it and turned all that rage on me, hard. "Do not touch her," Jessica shouted. Elena's head snapped toward me so fast. It looked painful. For 1 second, pure fear flickered across her features. Not fear of me. Fear of what would happen if Jessica saw her choose me. Then she did the cruelest kind thing I have ever watched someone do. She stepped toward me. Her body leaned in my direction like it wanted to close the distance. Her fingers reached out and brushed my forearm, searching for me like I was safety. Then her eyes flicked to her daughter's face, and everything in her body stopped. Her hand fell away from my arm like it weighed 100 pounds. "Caleb," she said. Her voice was thin and tight. "Please." The word sounded wrong. Not a request, a break. I waited, hoping she would say something else. Anything that sounded like a choice. Elena's chest rose and fell fast. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. She swallowed hard, like the inside of her throat hurt. She took another half step toward me. Jessica made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and a choke. Elena froze again. Her knuckles went white where they gripped the edge of the counter. She looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face. "Go," she whispered. The floor felt like it shifted under my boots. "Elena," I said. My voice came out rough. She shook her head in one small, sharp movement, like she was forcing herself to cut off the instinct to reach for me. Her eyes squeezed shut for a second. When she opened them, there were tears, but they stayed where they were. "Please," she said again, one hand pressed flat over her own chest, like she was trying to hold herself together from the inside. "I cannot lose her again." The words hit me hard. I stared at her. Then I nodded once, not because I agreed. Because she was being pulled in two directions by something I could not fight. I picked up my tool bag. It felt twice as heavy. I walked past Jessica without looking at her. If I met her eyes, I was afraid of what she would see in mine. My hands were shaking by the time I reached my truck. I sat there with the engine off, fingers wrapped around the steering wheel, breathing through my nose like I had just taken a hit to the ribs. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Elena. One line. "I am sorry." No explanation, no excuses. Just those 3 words sitting on the screen like a bruise you cannot rub away. 10 minutes later, Marcus texted, "You good?" I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I typed back one answer. "Working." Because if I stopped moving, I would start feeling. And I was not ready for that. That night, I did not go back to the Victorian. I went to my place, turned on all the lights, and scrubbed my hands raw in the sink, even though there was no dust on them. I lined my tools up on the counter in a perfect row. I slept in my clothes. I woke up at 3:12 in the morning because I thought I heard Elena's front door latch click. It was just my fridge settling. I still sat on the edge of the bed in the dark until the first weak light touched the window. The Chamber of Commerce gala was 2 days later. It was supposed to be her clean re-entry. New house, new role, new version of herself standing without Richard. I did not go, not because I did not want to see her, because I did not trust myself, not to storm the room and burn it all down. Instead, I parked my truck 2 streets away from the venue and watched the building lights through the misted windshield. At 9:17, Marcus sent me a photo. Elena on stage, microphone in her hand. Jessica in the front row, posture stiff, eyes distant. At 9:21, he sent a text. "Richard is smiling too much." At 9:24, my phone rang. I answered on the second ring. "Elena?" Her breathing hit my ear tight and thin. "I need you," she said. Then the call dropped. I did not think after that. I just drove. By the time I reached the gala, my hands were still shaking on the steering wheel. I parked crooked, killed the engine, and walked in through the side entrance. Noise hit first. Laughter. Clinking glasses. A voice on the microphone that thought it was funnier than it was. The ballroom looked like a picture from a magazine. Big chandeliers. Shiny floors. People in clothes that cost more than my tools. Up front, the host stood with a wide grin and a microphone. Beside him was Jessica, holding a small charity plaque, her smile sharp. "Elena Vance has done such beautiful work with this renovation," the host said. "And we all know renovations take strong hands." The crowd laughed in that way that cuts a little. Jessica's eyes gleamed. She leaned toward the mic. "Fortunately," the host went on, "Elena found a man willing to get dirty. Isn't that right, Elena?" Heads turned. Elena stood near the steps to the stage. Her dress was simple and dark. Her smile was tight and forced. Her hands were fists at her sides, knuckles white. Richard stood just behind her. He looked pleased, too pleased. Then her eyes found me. Across the room, through all the noise, they locked on mine. Something in her shoulders changed. Not softer, stronger, like a decision clicked into place. She walked up the steps, heels hitting the wood with steady taps. Jessica moved toward the mic, but Elena reached it first. She wrapped her hand around it and took it from the host like she did this every day. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was clear and even. "I am going to borrow this for a moment." The host blinked and stepped back. The room went quiet in a strange, slow wave. Elena stood there and looked out at everyone. No notes, no shaking cards. "This town loves pretty stories," she said. "A perfect wife, a perfect house, a perfect smile." She lifted her left hand, bare, no ring. "I spent a long time being something people looked at and adjusted," she went on. "A decoration, an accessory." A few people shifted in their chairs. Richard's jaw tightened. "This man," she said, and her eyes came to me again, "did not just fix my house." My chest tightened. "He built walls that actually hold," she said. "He replaced wiring that could have burned us alive. He stood in my doorway during a storm and made sure the lock held when I did not." Quote, "The room felt like it tipped. And when people laughed," she added, her voice sharpening, "he kept working. When people whispered, he showed up anyway. He did not ask me for a performance. He did not ask me to be convenient." She drew one breath. Slow. "I am done being a decoration," she said. "I am done letting other people decide what I am allowed to want." Her eyes stayed on mine. "I choose him," she said simply. "Not a rumor, not a story. Him." For a second, nobody moved. Then noise exploded. Not clear cheers or booing, just noise. Lena handed the microphone back to the stunned host, turned, and walked off the stage like she had just stepped off a ledge and found solid ground. She moved through the crowd toward the exit. I met her halfway, near the side doors. We stepped out into the night. The air outside was cool and smelled like wet pavement and perfume. The noise from the ballroom dropped to a dull roar behind the glass. Elena stopped under the awning. Her shoulders shook once. She pressed her palm over her mouth like she was holding something in. I stayed half a step away, waiting. Then she lowered her hand. Her eyes were wet, but there was fire in them. "You should not have come," she said. "I could not stay away," I answered. A laugh slipped out of her, short and cracked. She looked toward the doors where shapes moved and people stared. Then back at me. "I am scared," she said. The words were simple, but I am more tired than I am scared. My chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with the work. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small brass key. I held it flat on my palm between us. "It is for my place," I said. "If you need somewhere quiet. No stage. No Richard. No show." Her eyes dropped to the key. The muscles in her throat moved as she swallowed. She did not grab it. She stepped closer and closed her hand over mine, folding my fingers around the metal first. Warm skin, sure grip. Then she slowly took the key from my hand. My throat closed for a second. I had to force the next words out. "I am scared you will ask me to leave again," I said. "And I will not come back from that." 15 words. No speech. Just the bruise in my chest put into air. Elena's breath hitched. She lifted her free hand and cupped my jaw, thumb brushing the stubble there like she had the right. "I will not," she said. Then she kissed me, not rushed, not for anyone watching, just a clean, solid choice. When she pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine for a second. "Take me home," she whispered. Her fingers tightened around the key until it left a faint mark in her skin. 3 months later, the Victorian passed inspection with a clean report. New wiring, reinforced windows, dry walls, roof patched, subfloor solid. Elena did not throw a huge party. She ordered takeout and invited Marcus, my crew, and the one neighbor who had brought her soup during the storm. We ate on the back steps with paper plates, while the evening light slid over new paint and straight lines. The house smelled like grilled chicken and fresh lumber instead of rot. Jessica did not come. But that morning she had sent a text, a photo of a mug of peppermint tea. Caption, "How long do you steep it?" Elena stared at it for a long time. Then she typed back, 3 minutes. Do not leave the bag in. No speech. No big fix. Just a thread. A start. A week later, an envelope came with the Chamber of Commerce letterhead. I watched her open it at the kitchen counter while I sanded a cabinet door, sawdust in the air between us. She read it once, then again. A small sound left her, half laugh, half disbelief. She slid the paper across to me. Invitation to serve on the Housing Restoration Committee. Not a social role, not decor, a seat at the table where they made choices. Elena leaned back against the counter, arms folded, watching me read. I looked up. She did not shrink. She just waited. I set the paper down and walked over to her. No big move, no speech. I kissed her forehead. Quick. Quiet. You did that, I said. She shook her head once. We did, she answered. Then she nudged my taped knuckles with one finger, the way she had that first week, and finally smiled all the way. The first committee meeting was at City Hall on a Tuesday morning. I did not go in. I sat in my truck across the street, hands on the wheel, watching through the glass doors. I saw her walk in wearing a simple blazer, not trying to impress anyone, folder in hand. I saw 2 men who used to look straight through her stop and listen while she pointed at a blueprint on the lobby table. One frowned, then nodded. She was not decorating the room. She was running part of it. When she came out, she walked straight to my truck and got in on the passenger side, exhaling like she had been holding her breath for an hour. Her hands trembled once in her lap. Did I look like I belonged? She asked. I looked at her, then at the folder, then back at her. You look like you were in charge, I said. Her laugh came out small and surprised. She leaned her head back against the seat and let her shoulders drop. That night, she opened the letter again at her kitchen counter while I rehung the finished cabinet door. The house was quiet in a new way. Not empty, settled. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. The porch steps did not creak anymore when we walked out together. The house held. So did we.